So Breaffy 416, Ballaghderreen 306 in the Mayo Football Championship quarterfinals. Here, of course, with the match reaction, giving my thoughts and opinions on the game that I've just witnessed, of course. That took place on RTE earlier tonight. What a game it was in the end. Some match between these two clubs, between Breaffy and Ballaghderreen. Of course, Ballaghderreen led by 4 or 5 points at the start of the second half, and in the end, for Breaffy to turn it around so emphatically and win so comfortably, quite a statement indeed that they have put out. Now, obviously, it wasn't short without controversy. I mean, obviously, we had the incident where Cian Hanley was sent off in the first half. Quite a harsh red card, in my opinion. But of course, we will jump into that all in this video. We'll talk a bit about Knockmore and their win over Ballaghderreen as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. Okay, so what a game it turned out to be in the end between Breaffy and Ballaghderreen. Obviously coming into the game, Breaffy were, of course, the bookies' favourites to win the game, but a lot of people felt that Ballaghderreen had a real chance in this game. A lot of people had them down as the potential side now to go all the way, given the fact that Ballaghderreen had lost. Ballaghderreen were beaten by Ballaghderreen in the final last year. They're an experienced team. They've been there and done it. They've knocked on the door for a number of years. They're always there or thereabouts, whereas Breaffy are the team with all the inter-county stars but have yet to get over the line. So I suppose going into the game, it was going to be interesting to see how it all panned out. And obviously in the opening stages, we had a goal, but of course just before that, a fantastic point from Conor O'Shea, who in my opinion was the man of the match. I think it was between him and Andy Moran, in my opinion, for man of the match. I think the reason why Conor O'Shea gets it was probably because, unfortunately, Andy Moran just didn't get the supply line in the second half that he got in the first half, so we didn't quite see as much of him compared to as in the first. But obviously Conor O'Shea with a fantastic opening point, probably the best point of the game, hitting it from close to the sideline, just a really well measured and accurate point to get Breaffy on their way. But obviously, of course, straight down the other end, of course, a goal from Ballaghderreen, a really well worked goal. Cian Hanley into Andy Moran, who peeled away from his man and slotted it comfortably past Rob Hennelly. And an interesting point worth pointing out in this goal, of course, that wasn't mentioned on RTE, was the movement from Thomas Carmody. You'll actually see that he draws his man out completely. He's running the opposite direction and he's able to simply just slot the ball into Andy Moran, who'd already peeled away from his man as well. And it was a really well taken goal indeed from Andy Moran. And Ballaghderreen in the opening stages was causing Breaffy a lot of problems, causing them a lot of issues in that full back and half back line in particular. Breaffy just couldn't seem to get a hold of Ballaghderreen, and they just weren't switched on. And I think that was something notable about Breaffy in this game, was they just weren't quite switched on throughout the game. The Andy Moran wins the mark, slots it into Thomas Carmody, who then comfortably places it past Robert Hennelly. Really well taken goal. Even the third goal, you had 2 or 3 men running for the ball and it breaks loose, and before you know it, they've conceded 3 goals in about 15 to 20 minutes, and it looked like it was going to be hard for Breaffy to turn it around. I mean, they did have that goal from Aidan O'Shea, who had a very bright performance indeed. That's the reason why Aidan O'Shea is at full forward, is to win the high balls, to win the 50-50 challenges, to support the attack. He's not always the best, of course, at kicking points. I think we all know that. His accuracy isn't quite there, but he's very good at times at just supporting the attack, at getting in the right position at the right time, and really kind of contributing to some of the players around him. And that is in particular what he did in the second half, and of course as well in the first half. Obviously you did have that controversial red card where, of course, Cian Hanley, who was probably man of the match up until that point, was sent off. The first yellow card was a huge incident with about 10 players. He could have given anyone a yellow card. He chose Cian Hanley. And then the second one, very harsh indeed in my opinion. He's gone in for the ball, but he hasn't made enough contact for me on the face for the Breaffy player to go down there. For me, that it's not a red card. It's not a second yellow. I feel like we could have had a better angle on it. I would have liked to see a different angle on it to really see, did he make contact, because it was hard to tell. And one thing we're pointing out was Cian Hanley's reaction. Anytime the cameras went on him, he looked absolutely devastated, and you don't know, was there something else there that we just didn't see with the angle? But certainly from what we did see, it didn't look like a red card, and it certainly didn't look like a yellow either. I mean, it didn't look like a yellow at all. So Very harsh in particular. And Ballaghderreen, they did keep the momentum, to be fair. They kept the momentum. They kept chipping away with some very good points indeed from the likes of Andy Moran and Thomas Carmody. And in the end, of course, it was just the difference in the second half where Breaffy just seemed to gather a bit more momentum, going into the closing stages of the second half. And in the early stages of the second half, the kind of crazy part was that Ballaghderreen were comfortable on the ball. They were utilising the ball a lot more. They were keeping possession, and they looked like they were managing their lead. Whereas Breaffy at times were reckless. They were losing the ball in silly turnovers. Their tackling was poor. They were poor hand passes, poor passing in general. At times they just didn't look decisive enough and confident enough in what they were doing. Even with frees, Colin Flynn was fantastic at times from frees, but then they'd switch it up and go to Rob Henley. Rob Henley would score a couple of frees, and then they'd go back to Colin Flynn, which was interesting. Obviously, it didn't matter in the end, but it was interesting at the time when you were kind of watching it. And obviously, as I said before, they were dropping a couple of shots into the goalkeeper. They weren't clinical enough. But of course, in the end, going into those final 15 to 20 minutes, they just seemed to just gain more momentum, gain an extra level. Whereas Ballaghderreen tired quite massively, and perhaps with 14 men, it seemed to make a massive difference. Matthew Rowan, of course, with that goal, which was the turning point. As soon as that goal goes in, the game completely flipped. All of a sudden now Breaffy they were way more confident and decisive in their passing. They weren't making mistakes. Their tackling was way better. And you combine that with the fact that Ballaghderreen were tiring quite massively, it obviously meant that Breaffy were able to get another goal, of course. Conor O'Shea getting on the score sheet as well from a high ball in. And of course that other goal as well, I can't remember who actually scored the fourth goal, but I remember it was an absolute peach of a goal. I know Gareth Dunn laid it off, and then it was finished massively. I'm sure someone in the comments will remind me who that goal was, but it was a very well taken goal on his left peg. Brilliant finish into the top left corner. And as I said before, way more comfortable in possession in the closing stages. They were able to get more men forward, utilise the space way more, and in the end that's kind of how they rocked up with a 13-point difference. Ballaghderreen stopped trying massively in the closing stages as well. They kind of eased off with their tackling, and they knew the game was done. The supply chain, unfortunately, into Andy Moran just didn't work in the second half. They didn't get the same movement from the likes of Carmody. So of course the likes of Dara Kelly and Ryan Lynch and Cuba Callan, of course, they were the ones who were creating the opportunities for Andy Moran, of course, after Cian Hanley had been sent off. And unfortunately they just couldn't get the supply chain in the second half. They couldn't create the time in the ball, and their passing just wasn't quite there. And when they did get into the forward attacking areas, they just couldn't seem to muster up an attack and they weren't clinical enough. Just 1 point in the second half, which was quite disappointing. It would have been interesting to see, had Cian Hanley not had been sent off, how this game would have went. Would Breaffy still have got the second win and went on to win as comfortably as they did? It's an interesting one, because if Matthew Rowan doesn't get that goal, I'm not too sure they win as comfortably as they do. So it's interesting. It's interesting how it all kind of panned out, but a very intriguing battle nonetheless. Of course, the other game that took place today, Knockmore beating Ballaghderreen. Of course, it's seen the best defence against the best attack, and of course the best attack came through in Knockmore. Very intricate team, very young team, young players coming through there, some exciting stars to keep an eye on. And obviously Darren McHale with the 2 goals, looking very bright indeed. And that first goal, just very intricate, quick passing, great movement. Darren McHale finding himself in space in the square and just slotting it comfortably past the keeper. And in the end for Knockmore, a very well-deserved victory in the end. And look, listen, it's wide open. Could this be Breaffy's year now? Breaffy, I look at Breaffy from a Dublin point of view, kind of similar to Ballymun Kickham's. All the inter-county stars, all the big players, but aren't as dominant as they should be, don't win as much as they should be. But now the fact that obviously, there's been no inter-county season, this is during summertime when these players would be at their peak. It's interesting. It's definitely something worth considering, and it could be the year now that Breaffy get over the line. The fact that Castlebar are not there, Ballaghderreen, and obviously Ballintober are not there either. So it's wide open, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. Obviously, I'll keep a close eye on Westport as well. Lee Keegan, of course, is there. So that'll be an interesting one as well. But nonetheless, anyway, lads, this is going to be the end of the video. Of course, a bit of a different background setting here. It's because obviously recording this video at night time means not as much light, of course, in the house. But anyway, that's going to be the end of the video. Do leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. My name is Aaron, and I'll see you later.